Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Business of Wellness podcast. I'm your host, David Guttman. I'm so excited for my guest today. Got you in the hot seat today. You had me in the hot seat yesterday. So do you prefer Sam or Samuel?
Sam is good.
Okay. Sam Tejada. So founder and CEO of Liquivida, chairman of the American IV Association, host of the Healthy Point of View podcast. Thanks again. And author of How to Win in Modern Wellness. That's a long resume.
Yeah, there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more. Right?
Well, we haven't even talked about the firefighter and the paramedic stuff. Actually, I do want to kind of actually start there, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Because one of the things when we were talking yesterday that surprised me was you were like, I knew I wanted to be like a fireman and a paramedic when you were like a teenager. That's pretty unusual. What was the driver behind why you knew that's the direction you wanted to go?
David, it's nice that you asked that question because, one of the things when I talk to young people, I tell them that it's very important for them to define their definition of success, right? Because early on in my 20s, I was already making over 100 grand a year, and most people says, "Oh, he's successful." And me personally, I didn't feel successful because my definition of success had nothing to do with money, right? It was about what I was doing to fulfill myself, to fulfill my mission, my God-given purpose, to fulfill what I'm contributing to society, et cetera. So cool thing is I was able to define what my definition of success was very early on. So I kind of knew what I wanted to do. So I became a lifeguard. I got certified as a lifeguard at the age of 14. So I got into that whole rescue realm very early on in life. And throughout the years, I worked at the YMCA in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for the Milwaukee Public Schools. I also worked for the YMCA of the greater metropolitan of YMCA in Milwaukee. And then when my parents decided to relocate business and move to Florida my senior year in high school, I ended up transferring from the YMCA in Milwaukee to the YMCA in Boca Raton. So when I started working there as a lifeguard, I took it upon myself. I says, you know what? I want to learn how to be more comfortable teaching and talking. So I became a swim instructor. So I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor. And then I became a CPR first aid instructor, which actually led me to my first business, Rescue 101, that I started when I was 19. And I was still in high school when I was a lifeguard and swim instructor. And that's when I got exposed. One of the parents came in bringing their kids to swimming lessons. And this was a firefighter-paramedic for Palm Beach County. And I started talking to him about what he does. And he actually ended up telling me, he said, I used to be a lifeguard. And this was a very good move, not lateral move, but a good move from lifeguard into a career as a firefighter paramedic. So I started picking his brain. I was the kind of kid that was just like always asking questions. Like, I don't like to think about what something is. I like to find out what that is. So I'm the kind of guy who's like looking up YouTube videos to figure out how things are made, where things come from. So I started asking him these questions, and I said, I forgot the guy's name. So I asked him, I said, well, what is it all about? Well, how much do they get paid? Is it volunteer? Because, in some states, firefighting is volunteer work. So he says, no, actually here we have great benefits, fantastic pension. You're getting a starting salary of like 60 grand a year, and you only work a few days a week because you work these 24-hour shifts. So I was like, okay, I like that. Because in my mind, really what I wanted to do, I wanted to be an ER doctor, like a trauma surgeon. See average student, did not like academics, it was just not going to work for me. So that's why I told myself, man, this seems like the thing to do, become a firefighter paramedic. So right after high school, signed up for EMT school. From EMT school, that was a six-month course. Went straight into paramedic school, which that was a little bit tougher, because you're learning pharmacology, biology, physiology, all of that stuff you're going through. And then became a licensed paramedic in the state of Florida. Went through Fire Academy. Fire Academy was like about 3 to 4 months, give or take, all day. It was like being in boot camp. And I was a licensed certified firefighter paramedic by the age of 19. And then I got hired at age 20. Wow. Working for Oakland Park Fire Rescue.
So, and then you did that for, I think it was about a dozen years, right?
12 years, yeah.
Yeah. So now it sounds like, were your parents entrepreneurs or, because it sounds, you said that they were going to relocate their business from Milwaukee to Miami.
Yeah.
Is that where you got the entrepreneurial bug from? Or?
Oh, yeah. So both my parents are architects. and they had their architectural firm in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And my Uncle Modesto, he's actually the sponsor who brought us here from Dominican Republic. So he's also an architect. So my parents, when they moved from Dominican Republic, they were able to work in their actual field of choice as architects. So growing up, I was able to shadow my father and my uncle, and they were the type of people where it's like, as a kid, they will bring you to work, and show you what they're doing. That's kind of like the family I come from. Regardless if they're having business meetings, my dad programmed a lot of discipline in us. And when we would go to the office, we were doing stuff. We weren't just sitting there playing around. Like my dad would give us, back then, architects weren't using this AutoCAD and these computers. It was like real markers and pencils. And, they were showing us how to make the little model homes and everything. So, but the cool thing is when I was shadowing my dad and my uncle and going to like business meetings with them, I just love that like entrepreneurial hustle, that alpha male, going in there making deals. And I was seeing that as a kid, and I was just like, that's what I want to do when I get older. I want, at some point, I want to be in business.
Well, so how come you didn't follow in the footsteps of your folks and your uncle and going up being an architect?
Oh God, I hated it. I don't know how to draw. I'm the kind of guy who messes up a stick figure.
Dude, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. I'm the same as you.
So like when I'm building these little model homes, my uncle's showing me, but like we're doing it together. He's making this perfect, beautiful little tiny model home out of cardboard. And mine just comes up looking like, I mean, remember that story, the three little pigs and the wolf comes and blows. Mine was the house that got blown down first,
Right. So, so what's interesting to me is you take a career path, which is, hey, I'm going to be a paramedic and a firefighter, getting paid a salary, pension, the more, even working as part of a union, right?
Right.
But at the same time, you're also an entrepreneur, and those often don't go together. So that's interesting that you always know, because it sounds like you also had a business, the Rescue 101, that you started when you said you were like, what, 19?
19, yeah. Well, so that was growing up, I always had that hustler mentality. So I was the kid that would go knock on your door to shovel your snow, rake your leaves. I mean, in high school, I was buying at the dollar store perfumes and colognes for $1 and selling them for $10 in the parking lot of Walmart. So however I could make a few bucks, that's how I was doing it. So I always liked that hustling and making money type of deal. And my first opportunity to actually get in business was when I was working at the YMCA. So I got certified as a CPR instructor and first aid instructor, where I can certify other people and teach the course. And I remember it was summertime. Summertime was coming up, and YMCA has a huge, big summer camp for the kids. So the senior camp counselor came to the pool area and says, "Hey, Sam, we have all of the camp counselors, about 30 of them, and they have to get certified in CPR and first aid, and we haven't found an instructor. We know you're certified to teach." And I told him, I says, "Well, listen, I could do it. It's a 4-hour course, but it would put me in overtime. I was making like $15 an hour. So I says, we got to get approval from corporate. They don't want us working overtime." So, the senior camp counselor, she went over to corporate and says, "Hey, Sam has to work overtime, 4 hours. So that would have been like an extra $28 on my check." I said, "No, we can't pay him."
$28.
So the senior camp counselor says, "Listen, I have to contract a company. They can't pay the overtime. It's a nonprofit. They're really big on overtime. Says, do you want to incorporate yourself and maybe do it as your own business?" So I don't know. Let me see what that's all about. So I started researching how much CPR first aid training courses. Long story short, I ended up doing it. In 4 hours, I made like $3,500
versus $28.
versus $28. So I told myself, I says, "Man, I just cracked the code.
Right.
I'm going to start teaching CPR and first aid classes." That was the easiest $3,500 I've ever made. Right. And it's just like, in my head, I was just thinking, man, these people are just like, if there's other people that are this, sorry, but stupid, right? And not want to pay $28, but pay me $3,500, I'm in.
Right.
So that's when I incorporated Rescue 101.
So you'd already had that, it sounds like you had the hustler entrepreneurial mentality that from the jump. you take the more traditional career path, well, maybe not more traditional, but there's a career path, and then at some point you decide I'm out. Was it the risk associated with being a firefighter that pushed you out, or was it more the opportunity on the entrepreneurial side that was the driver?
No, not necessarily. So the cool thing about the fire department is that you work 24 hours on and you're off for 48 hours. So one thing I learned very early on at the fire department is that every single firefighter paramedic had some kind of side hustle to supplement their income.
Right.
So guys had landscaping businesses, that pressure cleaning. Some of them had painting businesses. Some of them worked in the ER on their days off. So for me, I was just like, well, I'm not going to just sit around and burn the little bit of money I'm making from the government. What I'm going to do is I'm going to supplement my income, and I'm going to continue to do these CPR and first aid trainings. Now I'm a firefighter paramedic, so my qualifications comes a little bit with more power than just, hey, it's a lifeguard teaching CPR first aid training. So I started doing a lot of the like corporate trainings for different offices that required CPR first aid training. And I started getting a lot of accounts. And then I started noticing a lot of these regulations that were being passed were like dental offices and sporting complex have to have defibrillators. So I got into distributing defibrillators to the same accounts that I was doing CPR and first aid training. Now, I'm a lifeguard at that point in time. So I got certified as a lifeguard instructor, which was just an additional certification. And I started thinking to myself, says, what job not better than being a lifeguard as a high school or college student? So I started researching. There was like two other companies here in South Florida that did lifeguard certification. So I was actually at that point in time certifying the majority of lifeguards in South Florida through the American Red Cross. So yeah, my company became an authorized provider for the American Red Cross. So I was doing lifeguard training, CPR training, and I just built up this company to really do that. Now the firefighter part, me leaving it. So eventually, I started kind of laying off of the CPR and first aid stuff because I started dabbling into a different business, which was the longevity space. So besides having that business, I got presented with an opportunity from a guy that I went to the fire academy with. And this was actually, I was 20 years old when this happened too. So I was doing multiple things, firefighting, the business, and then I was a phlebotomist. I was a phlebotomist for a company called Senogenics. So a buddy of mine that I went to the fire academy with, his mom was or his stepmom was one of the physicians for Senogenics. And he got this gig with Senogenics doing blood draws. And he hit me up. He said, "Oh man, I'm working for this job for my stepmom, and I hate it. It's all these rich people. If you're a minute late, they give you this hard time, and I'm getting yelled at." And I says, "Well, what is it? Well, how much are you getting paid?" He says, "Well, I get paid $100 per blood draw, and I got to do it first thing in the morning. I'm done by 9 o'clock in the morning, and I do like 6 people. So I'm doing the math. $600, and you're done by 9 o'clock in the morning. You're 20 years old." I says, "Well, let me do it. If you don't want to do it, let me take that job from you." He says, "Oh, really? Would you do it?" I don't want to do this." I took the job.
Right. Do the
And
math. That's 12 grand a month.
for me,
By 9 a.m.
me, I'm thinking about it, and I start visiting these people. I mean, these were some of the who's, the wealthiest of the wealthiest on the globe, and I'm thinking to myself, it's like, I'm in. All I got to do is build relationships with all of these people. I'm going to learn how to make money, you know? And that's what I did. I became very close to the chief medical officer, Dr. Robert Willix. I started learning everything about the longevity space, what they were doing with the VO2 max, DEXA scan, hormone optimization. And again, I come from a family where there's a lot of discipline. So I showed up on time, right? I was that guy who was wearing a nice pair of slacks, shirt tucked in, well shaven, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, good morning. How are the kids doing? Following up, is everything okay? And these clients ended up loving me. And they were going back to Dr. Willix, the chief medical officer, and and Dr. Willix was the kind of guy who was very difficult to please. But when he figured out that I was the guy, I became his guy. So he took me under his wing, and then I just started learning. I was doing all of his specialized blood work. They did a lot of stuff with growth hormone deficiency. So they implemented a new test called a glucagon stimulation test to diagnose people for growth hormone deficiencies. And they hired a nursing company to try to figure it out. And, one thing when you're trying to figure something out in the medical field, you need to know how to troubleshoot. As a firefighter-paramedic, when you're in the back of that truck, you got to learn how to troubleshoot. If not, that person's going to die. So I cracked the code for him on the glucagon stimulation test, and I really became Dr. Willix's guy. And then from there, he just started teaching me everything that he knew. As a former heart surgeon, now shaman, big longevity, world renowned kind of
He
guy.
was a shaman?
He was a shaman
I
also.
didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. He went off to Peru, studied with the natives there for 2 to 3 years,
Wow.
became a shaman.
I do like ayahuasca, stuff like that, or?
Oh, he was into all of that.
Okay.
Yeah. Talk
Yeah.
about alternative medicine, frequency, bioquantum. He was just so ahead of his time.
How old was he when he passed?
He was 80 years old. So
Okay.
he passed away right before COVID. Interesting enough, he's a shaman, right? He would meditate first thing in the morning at his office before he saw his first client. And he would always sit at the desk. He would wear this calm device, little visor over his eyes. He's meditating. His assistant went to his desk to let him know, hey, your patient's waiting. And he was still in the position of meditating, but gone.
No way.
Yeah. Which, in the bioquantum world, and
Yeah.
they say you crossed over to the other side.
Wow.
So I always feel like he's still with us,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's pivot a little bit just because of him. Let's talk about mentorship. So it sounds like he was. Have you any other sort of real mentors like that, or was he sort of the one that was like probably the most important mentor to you in your journey?
My father was always a big mentor when it comes to like business. I say it how it is. I learned a lot of things of what not to do,
Mm-hmm.
And not in a bad way. The thing is when you have parents that come from another country that don't really know the language 100%, and my dad's fluent in English, but there's always like this big shield that they put over themselves because they don't trust people, unless it's one of the, like another Dominican
Yeah.
per se. So I saw my father miss out on a lot of opportunities with his business because he just kept everything to himself. And one of the things that I learned from my dad as a mentor is, and he didn't actually teach me this. I learned it from seeing what other people were doing versus what he was doing. Is that my dad wanted to own 100% of this much, and I told myself, you know what? I'd rather own 10% of this much.
Yeah.
So for me, I was just, and it's a gift and a curse doing this, but I was just kind of like, if I had good intuition and felt the vibes from somebody, like I was letting them in. Like I was out networking. Hey, let's do business together. Let's grow together. I became that relationship guy. But yeah, so my dad was a mentor, and then I had a lot of other mentors that would really, help me with a few different things and give me advice, and especially a lot of the Senogenics patients that I became close with. I did blood draws for Senogenics for about 8 years.
Is Senogenics still around?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah, they kind of, unfortunately didn't stick with the times. That's why Dr. Willix eventually ended up leaving.
Oh.
But Dr. Willix was actually one of my partners in Liquivida.
Oh.
So our whole company, our longevity business, was built based off of all of his principles. Yeah.
Okay. Because I was a Senogenics client years ago, and I had a great experience. This would have been like 15 years ago, something
Nice.
like that.
Which doctor were you seeing?
It was in Chicago. I don't even
Oh,
remember.
Chicago.
Yeah. I honestly, I think he had
The urologist?
I think he had it was Indian. I think he had
Indian.
yeah, that's my recollection, but 15 years ago. I'm not sure. It's funny. I had a similar experience with my dad. My dad was an entrepreneur, and he ran a company that eventually went public. But I learned from things he got wrong, right? And so, in fact, the reason I decided to go to business school was, to me, it's okay to be bad at things in business, but it's the kiss of death to think you're good at something you're bad at. And so I wanted to make sure that there was no area of business I didn't understand at least enough that I couldn't be bullshitted.
Oh, right.
HR, operations, marketing, accounting, finance, didn't matter. Like I wanted to make sure I understood enough. And so, and something like my dad was very successful in many ways, could have been more successful if he understood some of his blind spots. And so I'm almost like psychotic about, and fortunately, my wife is great for this. I'm almost psychotic about making sure I don't have any blind spots. I'm curious, having had sounds like some really good mentors in your life. Are there people that you mentor currently?
I do. I love taking people under my wing. What I don't like is feeling like I'm wasting my time. So I have a few different, things that people have to present before I start investing my time in them. But if I see someone who has that drive, and wants to learn and grow, I'll give them a lot of time. Actually, I'll give them more time than what I probably should.
What I find that's interesting and frankly surprising to me um, is how much I learn from mentoring people, which doesn't even make sense. But it's almost like, you in order to there are a lot of things that, doesn't matter what domain area, whether it's being a paramedic or a business person, a lot of it's pattern matching. Like you don't even know why. You know exactly what the right thing to do is, but you don't necessarily consciously know why, right? But when you have to explain it to someone else that you're mentoring, now you have to understand it at a deeper level, or you're not going to be able to explain it to them. And so, what's interesting to me, and part of why I like mentoring so much, is I find that I often learn things myself, and because I'm doing a fair amount of writing and things like that. I find it actually really helpful to me for myself, my own purposes, which not why I do it, but it's kind of a nice unintended consequence.
Yeah, yeah. I feel the same way. It's almost like you learn yourself over again throughout when you're mentoring someone, when you have a mentee.
Yeah.
It's just like, man, you know what? I didn't think about it that way.
And it's also just like it's so rewarding. Again, like I have I'm the same way as you, which is I have people that I'm like, okay, I can't mentor this person. They're a headache, right? And there are other people, they're just a dream to mentor.
Yeah.
They take coaching so easily. They ask smart questions. They're respectful of your time.
Yeah.
It's like when you have people like that, it's like, oh my God, like
Makes it a lot easier and fun.
and fun.
Yeah.
It makes it really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk about the pivot into Liquivida. So, was was your mentor resigning from Senogenics? Like, what was the timing of all of that? That the idea of Liquivida, what it was going to be, and kind of what your role was going to be, what your mentor's role was going to be. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
So that was an interesting one because I didn't see myself like the opportunity kind of just like I tell people I just like stepped in shit, So I was going to these Senogenics clients' homes, right? I was going to their homes, and first I had one Senogenics client tell me about these vitamin IV drips that they were doing back in their home in California, and that they also get it done in Colorado at their other home. And what they were telling me is like the person who does these IV drips is an off-duty firefighter-paramedic, just like you, Sam. And they kept on telling me, it's like, there's not really that many places here in Florida that do these IV drips. You should get into it. You already know how to do, the stick. I'm coming over to the house doing the blood draw. Why don't you do the vitamin drips? So I kind of ignored it. The first few people that said it. Once I had like the fifth patient
Right.
tell me about this, I was like, what is this vitamin drip stuff? So I started looking into it. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. It seems like there's quite a bit of science behind it, especially with patients that have autoimmune issues and all this other stuff, and even for professional athletes. So I said, you know what? I want to get into this. So there was a wellness center very close to my house, probably like 10 minutes away, that I would go there to get adjusted with a chiropractor. So the chiropractor, this clinic that he had was called East West Physicians, where he took Eastern and Western medicine and integrated them together. It was a really cool concept that he put together. He had massage therapy, he had medical aesthetics, he was doing hydroclonic therapy, pain management, he had a medical doctor on site, physical therapy, everything you could think of was in this place. But like any other doctor, they always have a few rooms that are just collecting dust. So I told him one day when I went there, I said, hey, man, I got a business proposition for you. Take this big room in the back that you don't currently have any physical therapists. You got all this equipment. Let me move that to your storage. Let me take over that room. You provide the facility, medical oversight, have the front desk girls be able to make a few phone calls and whatnot. And I'll come on my days off from the fire department and I'll work this business and I'll put all the money into it, right? And I'll give you 20% of whatever I make doing these IV drips. Just start referring clients to it. And for him, he was like, well, it's not making any money now. You're willing to do all the work, come in and do the work and put up the money. So for him, it was like winning the lottery. So we did that, and that was the start of Liquivida. in a
Okay.
small room, little small room, probably as big as a studio here, in his office. And as I started doing it, I was doing no marketing. Somehow people were finding us, and people were driving an hour and a half to come get these IV drips.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that's why I went home and I told my wife, I said, I think we got something here. At that point in time when that was happening, I didn't have the Liquivida brand established. It was just me doing IV drips at East West Physicians. And so I started talking to Dr. Willix, who was still with Senogenics. I was saying, Dr. Willix, I'm doing these IV drips. I'm getting a lot of traction. And initially, he wasn't really for it. He was like, I used to have a chelation center. I did all of that stuff. Too many regulations, the Board of Pharmacy and the Department of Health, they don't like it. I says, I don't know, but I like it, doc. And it's helping the patients. He said, yeah, I know it's good, this, that, the glutathione. And I launched a business. I was about a year in already, built the brand, and I was getting some serious traction. I was already projected to open up a whole new location in Fort Lauderdale. And
so you had your own facility at that point, or were you still renting the room in that?
I still had that room.
Right.
And as we're doing the IVs, a client comes in who has a med spa in Fort Lauderdale off Oakland and A1A. And her med spa is doing a lot of medical aesthetic stuff. And she loves the IV drips. And she says, hey, can I give you a room at my med spa? I was like, wow, this is going to be the second location of having Liquivida inside of a wellness center or med spa. So I commit to that and do it. But what I didn't know is that this lady was never around. It wasn't like the other place that was a rotating door of clients. So like now I had to figure out how to bring clients into the door. It's kind of we were just sitting there waiting for clients to come in the door. She was always traveling, Dubai, she was in Mexico, very wealthy lady. And eventually I told the lady, I says, listen, this is not working. How about if I take over your whole med spa, right? Because no one's ever here. And then I give you a room to do your medical esthetician stuff that you're doing with your patients. He says, okay, that's a good deal. So that's what I did. And then I created the Liquivida brick and mortar storefront at that point.
Wow.
By taking over that.
And so how did Dr. Willix come into it? What was the pivot there?
So with Dr. Willix, once I had that second location and showing Dr. Willix what's happening and how much traction there is and how now there's other companies that are trying to get into the industry, I sat down with him. He says, all right, I'm going to be a part of it. And I already had that relationship with him for like 8 or 9 years,
right.
With Senogenics. So he trusted me and he committed to it, brought him on board as an equity partner. He became the chief medical officer of Liquivida. And for me, that was huge because like being as young as I was 26 years old at that time.
Wow. And
having someone at the caliber of Dr. Willix as my chief medical officer and my partner, it's like, I'm going to win the game.
That's amazing.
So, and it was a great journey. We would travel together to like the A4M and he would introduce me to everybody. I mean, he knew everyone you can think of, all the top doctors. So walking just the exhibit hall, which what that's like at the A4M, walking it with Dr. Willix, he was the GOAT. So
right.
It's like people would just come up and he would introduce me.
Hey, with Michael Jordan of
seriously,
longevity.
And that's how he was like, hey, this is Sam. This is my guy. This is Sam. This is my guy. Until today, people come up to me. It's like, hey, like when he passed away, people were reaching out to me to figure out what happened. They knew that I had that such close relationship with Dr. Willix.
Wow.
That
had to be a hard loss for you.
It was tough. It was tough. And I won't forget, I was in the parking lot of Publix when I got a phone call from someone that used to work for him that now has a longevity clinic in Connecticut. She said, did you hear what happened to Dr. Willix? No. And then from there, I was just like, man, but at the end of the day, firefighter-paramedic.
Yeah,
right?
You've seen a lot.
6-7 years in, I understand death. I've seen more death than what you can think of, and very gruesome death. So for me, it was just like life goes on. Now it's time to figure out and build from here, and bring someone else. Now, fortunately, at the point in time that he passed away, he took a few other doctors that were already in the mix of Liquivida under his wing and was training them. Dr. Christopher Davis and also Dr. Kendrick Haywood, which both of them are my partners now in Liquivida. Right, when he passed away, Dr. Christopher Davis, who's an interventional cardiologist, he took over as the chief medical officer. Wow. After Dr. Willix. So they both understood the principles of what the company was built on, because they trained under Dr. Willix. So, and we all felt the same way. We said, you know what? Dr. Willix was onto something, published author of over like 10 or 12 longevity books, world renowned, spoke on all the biggest stages that were out there. So we all actually made a commitment, says it's up to us to take his legacy forward, keep his legacy going. And that's what we did. We just said, you know what, we have a mission here. We've always felt connected to Dr. Willix on an energetic level. And now we have to take the baton where he's left it and run with it, and take it to the next level. And that's what we're doing.
So talk a little bit more. So my wife, her sister is a nurse in Manhattan, and she's just their hospital went on strike, and so she's started to do IVs as a way to make an income while her hospital's on strike. And she was saying the margins on it are kind of insane, right? It's a pretty high margin business, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Tell me about Liquivida and exactly like what you guys are trying to do and kind of what your driving mission is and what you guys are trying to accomplish.
So Liquivida, we have actual longevity centers throughout the United States. My main location's here in Fort Lauderdale. It's a corporately owned and managed location. And when I say longevity center, a lot of people say they have a longevity center, but we're really big into diagnostics. For us, it's not you come in and kind of just pick something off of a smoothie menu, how a lot of these places are. We want to treat you based off of your health data. So at our facilities, we have a DEXA scan, we have VO2 max, RMR, hyperbaric chamber, red light bed. We have the whole 9 yards in there. We also have a full medical aesthetics division. We have over $3 million in equipment just in one facility. So when it comes to the IV business, what we're doing with Liquivida, we're not just doing IV treatments. That's one thing that we do out of the clinics, but we're also on the pharmacy side. So we develop a product called the Liquivida IV kits and also packets. We have the highest quality IV therapy product on the market. Why do I say that? So our products are the only products here in the US that are preservative free. So when you go to some of these clinics and you see them prepare these IV bags, typically they're going into a hood system. Well, let's hope they have a hood system, right? And they're utilizing what's called a multi-dose vials. So multi-dose vials is for you to create multiple dosages or compounds out of one vial. So the multi-dose vial, for it to not grow, mold, bacteria, or any kind of fungus inside of it, they put a preservative in it. That's called benzoyl alcohol, which we already know benzoyl alcohol is a known toxin, right? So why would we want to put a known toxin inside of our body when we know that a toxin produces oxidative stress and it increases inflammation in the body? When we do IV drips, what are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce oxidative stress. We're trying to reduce inflammation. So we created these kits that are preservative free. It's one vial per patient, right? The packets have several different vials to create the different formulations. We have 9 different formulations that we've created based off of over 12 years of data. So when you do any of the diagnostics on your patients, we pretty much know that they're going to fall in one of these 9 type of formulas that we've created over the last 12 years. So we have our very unique clean product that are developed in a 503B pharmacy, which is regulated at the federal level by the FDA. And that product is a product that we sell to over 5,000 doctors nationwide. And part of that process is training the doctors and letting them understand how to do IV vitamin therapy the right way to take care of their patients.
So it sounds like maybe the B2B part of your business is much bigger now than the direct to consumer one.
It's always been much bigger,
Oh,
man.
it has it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So I thought that was new, the B2B stuff.
Yeah, it's newer,
Right.
but it's been around for 8 years.
Oh, okay, got it.
And I've been scratching my head for 8 years, wondering why I'm in the franchise business.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I would think that would be way less headaches on the B2B side, way less overhead, way less.
It is. I mean, you wake up in the middle of the night and you're making money, right? Because
Right.
doctors are logging in, username and password on the portal and just ordering product. So, which we're in 2026. And one of the things that I did in 2025 at the end of September, Liquivida franchising merged with Drip Bar, which Drip Bar, they've sold over like 600 locations. They have 130 that are open. And Ben Crosby, who's the CEO of Drip Bar, he took over all of the Liquivida franchises. So he's the CEO of Liquivida franchises.
Okay.
So I still own all of the corporate stores. I still own 100% of the Liquivida name and all the IP. But my focus now is the distribution side, and then the corporate longevity stores, which the corporate longevity stores, we're more focused on functional medicine versus the franchises were more focused on just basic wellness and medical aesthetics, doing the dermal fillers, the facials, the peels, things of that nature. So our longevity centers on the corporate side are heavily focused on functional medicine, where we're really diving deep and optimizing people's health.
And how many locations do you have for that?
The corporate 3.
3. Okay.
Yeah.
I just plan to expand that, or what's the what's the goal there?
Not right now. In the near future, our goal would be to have like another handful, and just it would be a destination type of business, and it would be in places like New York, Chicago, LA. But besides that, I'm not looking to get in the franchise business whatsoever at all. I'm not looking to go back into that. This is what I will say is that the functional medicine space, it's not a franchisable business. And I know some people are going to listen to this and be like, Sam, listen, I'm watching it closely. I've been watching it for the last 20 years. You can't just have a regular business person trying to get into this functional medicine space, and then you're just hiring people on the fly to try to learn the stuff that we're doing. It's not there. Work. Maybe with a lot of the technology and the AI stuff where the treatment plans are created automatically, and then you have like a facilitator that just goes based off of it. Potentially in the future, you might be able to have something, but the way that we've been doing it, where you really have to have someone with that skill set and knowledge, there's not that many people out there that have it. So the functional medicine space, especially if you're a business owner like myself, I'm not a doctor, I got to hire people, right? So I'm hiring mid-level practitioners or even doctors. They work for you 2-3 years, but then they leave and go do their own thing. Well, guess what? What happens? You start from square one, right? All those clients are probably going to follow them. So for me, it was just, we did it, we tried it, and the business grew, but man, that took a lot of energy, a lot of money, and a lot of stress. And being in my position, it was one of those things where I had to really kind of just like think about it very closely. Like my wife and I, we would always talk about it every night. It's like, we're making I haven't taken any money from anyone, by the way. So
all bootstrapped.
Yeah,
wow.
This has been all bootstrapped. So the franchise business was fully funded, millions of dollars, maybe. Definitely over $10 million to just build the franchise business over the years, was funded by our distribution vertical. So we were taking what would have gone to the bottom line to build a franchise business. And I'm just thinking, every day and night we're thinking, it's like, man, if we didn't have the franchise business, we'd be putting millions in a pocket every single year, like straight up in my pocket. So it got to a certain point where we're just thinking, it's like, we have this business vertical right now that is doing so well and has so much more potential, but we're spreading all of our team members so thin, focused on this franchise business and doing all of this stuff that's actually consuming the majority of our time. Imagine if we took all of these people that have been with us for so many years. I've got employees that have been with me since the day we started, right? And put all of their energy into the distribution vertical. Where would we be? Right? We would be producing some tremendous revenues. We would be able to really fulfill our God-given purpose in helping millions of more people throughout the nation. So that's where we made that commitment, merge with Drip Bar, let Ben take over the franchise business. For him, it was easy because he already has, a whole team of people. Right. He's in the industry. So it was just acquiring the locations and putting his team on it. So I didn't lose not even one person from my team, and we just transitioned their focus. So it's probably been like about 15 days where we finally passed the baton of Ben.
Oh, it's that recent. Okay.
It's that recent.
Okay.
Where now it's like
that has to be a huge relief.
Oh,
I could totally see why that makes so much sense strategically to do that. I want to obviously I only went to your office yesterday and only met a few of the folks, but I could just tell by the few people that I met. I mean, everyone is so professional, so buttoned up, organized, I mean, really on point. Maybe talk a little bit about the culture you've built, how intentional that was, and kind of how you think about, building your team and maybe the red flag and green flag qualities you look for and don't look for in terms of, putting your team together.
Yeah, man, hiring people was one of the most, it still is one of the most interesting things and finding the right people. I had a few partnerships of people that I would bring into the business that, went south, and we just didn't see eye to eye. I had a chief marketing officer that was with us early on. He actually helped me with a lot of the marketing and branding for my first business, the Rescue 101. Cool guy, very smart, great at marketing, but he just had a whole different thought process on what culture was in the business. And I really never got the answer of how to develop a culture for your business until I read a book written by Marcus Collins called For the Culture. So Marcus Collins, I'm not sure if you know who Marcus Collins
No.
is. So he was the digital strategist for Jay-Z and Beyonce for over a decade. And he's worked on some of the biggest projects that you can think of with Pepsi, Coca-Cola, the Kardashians, Peloton. And he's gotten a lot of people out of hot water as well, too, a lot of big companies. And when I read his book, everything just started clicking, and I was just like, man, we've been doing this wrong the whole time. Eventually, there was a separation between the partnership that I had with the chief marketing officer, and I took a whole different approach with building the culture of the business. And what I learned was that the culture of your business is not created based off of you. The culture of your business is created based off of your customers, right?
Mm.
Your customers are the ones who really establish what the culture of your company should be, right? So if I have a business, let's say I have a business that sells stuff to people that are in the military. Well, the culture of my business can't be, something
Flower
girly, or
child.
you know what I'm saying? It has to be, the culture of the business is going to be something very alpha, very military style. The uniforms that the team members are going to wear is going to represent that, right? So then our customers feel like they're part of that culture, right? Where they feel like, okay, I can go ahead and wear the name of that company on my chest. And Marcus Collins, which ironically, he's totally on the left side politically, but he brings something up in his book. And he talks about Donald Trump, about how Donald Trump is the one and only president who's truly built the best culture behind his following. Where people literally will wear his name on their chest.
Right.
And no other president has been able to really do that.
And no other president has merch.
No, at all. It's like you go out on the water, every boat has a Trump flag.
Yeah.
It's just like he did it. He knows what he's doing. So as I started learning about truly, and his book is called For the Culture. So as I started learning truly how to build a culture, I started making sure we're hiring the right people to represent who our customers are.
Mm.
I wasn't hiring people based off of, well, this is what the company's culture should be. So let our customers tell us what the culture of the company should be.
Mm.
So but yeah, so for us, it's I've always said since day one, I with our employees, I want to have what's called a Liquivida family. I want people to feel comfortable, like they're at home. That they can open up, talk about personal problems, talk about business problems, whatever it is. And we've been pretty successful at that. Really building a very positive culture within Liquivida. People that represent what the company should be, represent what the customers would like to hear, see, and feel. And it's something that we're going to continue to grow. Now, as we were growing in the franchise side of business, one thing that I started noticing when you bring a lot of these new minds, right, these new business owners, the franchisees, it was tough to continue to bring that culture and make sure that they're representing that culture. A lot of training, even with a lot of training, because you get a lot of these franchisees that are, retired from this other medical business, or, doctor who's no longer wants to be in the ER anymore after 30 years. Like some of these people, there's a saying that they say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And no lie, some of these you cannot teach them new tricks.
Especially if they're a doctor.
The ego.
Yeah,
The ego was just tremendous.
It's funny you bring up ego. The two qualities that, and honestly, it's embarrassing that I didn't come to this earlier in my career, but the two qualities I look for above all else now, whether it's in someone I'm in partnership with or someone I'm looking to hire, are humility and curiosity above everything else. How do you think about those, and are those important in what you're looking for in your team members?
Definitely curiosity, right? The curiosity part, And I want to make sure I'm answering this
Sure.
based on what you're saying. So the curiosity, you're talking more of like the employee having that curiosity to learn more and
Yeah, the person who said that, the person who's the lifelong learner, the person who's has that growth mindset. Because without curiosity, I don't know how you can have a growth mindset.
yeah,
It's the person who's always asking questions. Well, why do we do it that way? I'm just curious. Like that person said, sometimes you're like, yeah, why do we do it that way?
yeah, 100%. Earlier on in our conversation, I was telling you like I'm the guy that if I see something like if I see this pillow right here, right, I wonder how it's made. I'm not gonna just sit here and keep on wondering for the rest of my life. I'm gonna go on YouTube. I'm gonna start looking it up. I was that kid that would love going on PBS and watching how things are made.
Right.
Just so I have an understanding of what it is. So I always look for that in other people. When they see something, hear something, or are curious about something, where do they take it from there? Are they going to ask the questions? Are they going to be willing to learn more? You know, um, so that to me, that's something that's extremely important with employees, finding people that have that curiosity to learn more, to want to be able to engage with the clients and figure out, well, why are these people coming into the location?
What about what about humility as a characteristic that you look for? Is that something you think about much, or?
So what do you mean by the humility?
Well, like for me, like the person I don't want is the person who, even if they are the smartest person in the room, the person who's always trying to act like the smartest person in the room. I want to, because what my experience is. So as an example, if I take someone like a Jordan Peterson, okay, smart guy, probably way smarter than me, not a humble guy,
Right.
right? And so and not only that, but his identity is invested in being the smartest person in the room and in always being right. My experience is the person who has an ego like that, it's hard for them to make adjustments. It's hard for them to take in new information if that new information is at odds with the point of view. They're emotionally invested in being right. And so for me, it's like I try to have strong positions loosely held. So
Right.
I like this is what I believe, and then you come to me. Well, Dave, did you think about this? Oh, Sam, I didn't think of that. Oh, now my position, now my opinion's completely changed.
Yeah.
My opinions have changed on literally almost everything when I think about it. I've been wrong about almost everything. If I think about that, the whole, trajectory of my life. And so how can I be so sure I'm not wrong now?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What I'll say on that is I try to find someone I like smart people, powerful people, but I like to find people that are humble. You know, um, the ego has to be put off to the side, especially when in this industry there's too much ego. And so someone who's humble is extremely important. And one thing I learned early on, and I learned this in my teens, do more listening, less talking. So when I can have people around me that are willing to listen to other people, I know that they're going to at least acknowledge and absorb what other people are thinking and how they're feeling. Because if they're just doing all the talking and not allowing themselves to actually bring things in, how are you going to be a team player? You're going to be one of those people that it's either your way or the highway. That doesn't work for me. You know, Me personally, and people see me as a CEO in my organization. A lot of the times, I'm inside of a meeting. I'm not even talking. I don't even talk. I just listen, hear what everyone's saying. You know, because that gives me the ability to just like understand everybody. Yeah, especially when there's like a lot of clusterfuck shit happening within the organization.
right.
It's like I don't want to jump in and start asking all these questions and trying to pull things out of people. I want to kind of sit back and just kind of understand. Let me evaluate from here. And I'll go 2-3 hour corporate meeting and walk out of there, scratching my head. It's like, okay, well, I know some of the things where we got to make adjustments. This is going to be easier than what people are making it out to be.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. I think there's definitely some truth in what you were saying about who your customers are, sort of being a driver of the culture. But I also feel like the personality of the CEO is a big factor too. And like when I've been mentoring people about a more traditional career path, or say my daughter in a corporate job, I'm like, look, I said, the greater the distance between your value system and the value system of your CEO, the bigger that gap, the more miserable you're going to be. Closer
Absolutely.
those things are, the happier you're going to
Yeah.
be. And, it will be relatively easy for a guy who's, been a calendar pinup guy, and a very successful entrepreneur to have a huge ego, to be the person who's talking in the meeting nonstop, not being the person who's sitting back. I would imagine that would attract that kind of person to your organization, I would think.
It would. And, one of the things that, and I'm happy you brought that up because that's important to talk about, my values. So, which that does feed into the culture of the business as well. The internal culture of the employees, which then extends to the overall culture of the company. But that's what our core values of the company is based off of, is really what my morals and my values and all of that stuff are, um, how I think about life, right? And how people should be with other people. That's how we've developed our core values. And that's something that we look in when hiring, team members, we look for those things. What are people doing besides just working?
Mm,
You know, what are people doing to give back to society?
right.
Are you volunteering? Are you going to church every single weekend? Do you have a spiritual belief? Are you working out? Are you eating healthy? Or are you just coming here to collect a check and pretend like you're doing these things?
Right.
For me, that doesn't work. It's it's extremely important to have more than just working. And one thing that I've noticed a lot in the longevity space in the industry, I was just talking to my wife about this yesterday. I got off of a phone call. I got a call from a guy who's been in the industry for like 10 years. He randomly called me like at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. I answered, "Oh, I got this good business idea, this, that, blah, 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 blah." And I got off that phone call after 30 minutes. And I told my wife, I said, I'm sick and tired of getting these phone calls about just money, money, money. Like, listen, I'm not running the Mother Teresa Foundation. So
Right.
yes, I want money. Don't get me wrong. But tell me about what you're doing to help people, right? We're in the health and wellness business. Tell me what the overall outcome is going to be, the overall positive outcome is going to be, that's going to have an impact to our nation, an impact to society. And then let's talk about what the business idea is that's going to accomplish that. All you want to do is talk about these numbers and how much we could sell this, but where's your passion? Where's your purpose? It can't be just the money. There has to be more to it. We got to accomplish something here.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I learned, my health journey, that for me, it's again, I'm not Mother Teresa either, but I let money be the side effect, not the goal.
Right.
Like, if I'm doing the right things, I'll make money. And my experience is that I'll actually make more money if I'm less focused on making money, because you build the right business
Right.
and you attract the right people, including the right customers, the right vendors, the right partners, when you're purpose and mission driven and not money driven. When you're money driven, I think it's like the person who ends up with a gold digger for a wife, right? It's like
Yeah.
if that's what you're putting out there, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. 100%, man.
Yeah.
100%.
So let's talk a little bit about, when it was really nice that I got to meet your wife briefly yesterday. So, asked you to the prom in high school.
Yeah.
21 years later, I think you said you're still together. Is that
Yeah.
the math
We
right?
got together. She was 17. I just turned 18.
Okay.
Is that legal?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Depends on the state, I guess.
we were in high school. We actually were in AP US government class together. So, I came from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So when I came down here, like, I was in every AP class, which I was a C average student, but the academics down here in Florida was just so much easier. So they put me in all these AP classes
Okay.
as the class clown. So I was in that AP class, and we went the whole semester. I never talked to her. She was like the valedictorian smart girl. I was the class clown. I won't forget, Mr. Rumfield was his name. This was the last month of high school. He decided to make people partner up and work on a AP US government project together. You didn't have the ability to choose who you're going to work with. So he paired myself and her up.
The class clown with the valedictorian.
So interesting enough, her and I had a mutual friend, Muna. And I was dating a girl around that time. And one thing about me is that I wanted to go to senior prom. That's one thing. I had exactly what I wanted to wear to senior prom. I wanted to wear this all white tuxedo with the two tails in the back, with a pimp hat with the feathers coming out of
I
it. And the
hope there's
cake.
a picture of this I could see.
Oh, I got the pictures, and we'll put it for B-roll on this podcast too. And the girl that I was dating at the time didn't want to go. You know, she was acting a little weird and stuff. So I broke up with her.
Okay.
And Shayna didn't have anybody to go with. I didn't know this. And I guess our mutual friend Muna tells us, well, why don't you ask Sam to go to prom? And she was very hesitant. She's like, yeah, he's a little bit of a class clown. I don't know. He is cute, blah, 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 blah. And there wasn't cell phones back then. And I remember being at home. It was like 7:00 at night. And the house phone goes off. And my sister's like, hey, there's a girl on the phone, blah, blah, blah. You know how brothers and sisters are. And what I didn't know, my sister was still on the other line listening to the phone call.
Eavesdropping, right?
But the cool thing is that phone call, which my sister will tell you, is I was being asked out to go to prom by Shayna. And you know, she called me and she says, hey, you know, I don't know if you have somebody or a date, but I was thinking about going to prom and I don't have anybody to go with. I told her, says, listen, interesting enough, the girl I was talking to, she broke up with me and I want to go to prom. Let's do it. And I told her, I said, but hold on one second. I says, this is very important to me. I already know what I want to wear. So if you don't have a dress yet, or even if you have one, you're going to have to get one to match this. She said, all right, let's do it. And we went to prom together. We had a freaking blast. And we've been together since.
Wow.
Yeah.
21 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's so rare these days. We were talking about this off camera that, you know, successful guys, like, it's their biggest blind spot in my experience. You know, so how did you guys decide that you were going to work together? Have you worked together all along the way? Or was it she just got involved with Liquivida, or?
So at our age, you know, we just graduated in high school. She actually got accepted to go to USF in Tampa. So she didn't want to start dating me. You know, we were talking, and, you know, summertime, she was still here before she left off to college. And I remember it was just a few weeks after prom. And I told her, says, listen, I'm not going to just be hanging out with you. Like, if we're going to be dating, you need to be my girlfriend. She said, well, I really don't know if I want to. I says, all right, listen. And I remember exactly the night. We went to Walmart late at night, and we went to go grab ice cream at Walmart that would come with those little wooden spoons.
Yeah.
And we were sitting in her car eating that ice cream. You know, what a date, right? I'm only 18.
Spare no expense.
and I told her, I said, listen, if you don't say yes for me being your boyfriend, then we're not talking after this. So I give her an ultimatum at that point. And she'll say, she's like, he kind of forced me. And she agreed to it. You know, she did still go off to college for a semester, and she got a little homesick. She's very close with her family and stuff. So she ended up moving back. She says it wasn't moving back for me, but I think otherwise. And once she came back, you know, she was part of my whole journey, going through paramedic school and stuff. She was very supportive, helping me type things on the computer because I'm this type of typer, you know, and we just started growing together. And I won't forget when I started Rescue 101 at the age of 19, and I started making money, right? Where my dad told me, like, hey, you know, you got to start keeping track of your books. You know, you're going to have to do taxes and statuses. Oh, man. I remember when my dad, just for my personal accounts, he started trying to teach me how to use QuickBooks. I was like, all right, I got to learn this QuickBooks thing again. So then the light bulb turned off, and I told myself, I got an idea. So I went to Sam's Club, Costco or Sam's Club, one of those two. And I bought the QuickBooks CD-ROM. And I was still living at my parents'. Shayna, my wife, came to visit me that night. We were both only 19 years old. And I told her, I said, Shayna, I got a surprise for you.
The Valentine's Day QuickBooks.
And I gave her the QuickBooks CD-ROM. I said, listen, I need you to learn this. You know, I want this business to be ours. And, you know, you're good with this computer stuff. And that QuickBooks CD-ROM, she learned that thing like there was no tomorrow. And that led her from learning QuickBooks, getting a part-time job with another office as a bookkeeper, to going to school, studying business, finance, and now being the CFO of this multi-million-dollar nationwide company.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What an amazing story. Yeah. And it seems like you guys work out together, you work together. You know, it's it is amazing to me that, you know, because when I've seen, because the reality is most relationships are not successful. I mean, that's just look at the math, right? It's the statistics are the statistics. And I think it's because people don't make the active decision. Because if you have separate lives, like completely separate lives, you work out separate, you know, your careers are completely separate, like your friends are completely separate.
Yeah.
It's not so surprising that that doesn't work out so well.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely the case in a lot of relationships that I've seen. And you know, I'll tell you, man, I give it to her. I take my hat off for Shayna because she's just a different kind of human being, you know? Like she puts in the effort to really try to understand not just me, but just relationships in general, right? She's a woman of faith, you know, morals and families comes first. You know, if it was up to her, if she lost a business tomorrow and still had her family and she was completely happy in that sense, you know? So, and listen, I'm not going to sit here and say it's been an easy road for 21 years, you know? Listen, we got married at a young age. I'm on a fireman's calendar. She's doing her. So, we had our ups and downs and, financial issues early on, but we worked through all of it. When we first got married, I had guys at the fire department. Oh, you got to have everything separate. Sam, you already bought your house at age 22. You got to get a prenup. And I told myself, I was like, just because I knew the type of person she was, I told myself, I says, no, everything's going to be together. Everything's going to be one bank account. Whatever we go through, we're going to go through it together. And that's what we've been doing, since day one, everything's been together. What I provide as value, she provides the complete opposite of value. She manages all the finances. She holds it down. I'm the guy who will go out there. I will make the money, right? And she manages the money. My father-in-law says it very well. He says, Sam, you're the head of the house. You're the head of the company. But my daughter, she's the neck. She rotates the head where it needs to look. And no lie, that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's working well. So I'm just curious from a morbid curiosity standpoint, as a paramedic, what was the craziest thing you've ever seen?
The craziest thing I ever seen, and I've seen some crazy stuff.
I can imagine.
Crazy stuff, man. Yeah, I've seen cool stuff, crazy stuff. Been on scene with FBI, ATF. I mean, I've seen some really gruesome calls.
Yeah.
I've seen bodies flipped inside out. Gang violence, stabbing, shootings. The craziest, the things that bothered me the most were anything against kids. Especially when you still have to treat the person that affected the kid, and you gotta, you took an oath to, as much as I want to just put something inside of their IV line while we're, unfortunately I couldn't do that. But this is a crazy one. We get called out to a 911 call, and we worked in a very metropolitan, low-income area, Oakland Park. And interesting enough, in Oakland Park, for some reason, when people call 911 at night, they keep all their lights off. So now you're going into this home. You don't know what the hell to expect. You're walking over things. There's a lot of hoarders and stuff. And we get called out for a welfare check. So we go and we're flashing the lights through one of the windows. And we get to the bathroom window and we see this guy butt naked. He looks like he's probably 80 years old, which he was really only 40 years old. So just imagine how he looks. All shriveled up and blood all over the place. And we go in there and this guy looks like something from that little character that would pop out on the TV show Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah.
He kind of looked like
Crypt
that.
Keeper, yeah.
So we get there and the guy's just like, the voices. And he's going like this and his head's the voices. And I'm looking at it and he has a freaking clothes hanger opened up inside of his head trying to get the voices out. Right?
Oof.
And what he ended up doing, he took a drill, drilled through his skull into his brain, and then was taking the clothes hanger, trying to get the voices out. Now, as paramedics with any kind of trauma, specifically to the head, any impaled objects, you have to leave it in and let the trauma surgeon remove it, surgically.
Right.
Man, we took him to the trauma center. They did all of the scans and everything else. I don't know how the hell this guy did it. He drilled a hole through his head, put the hanger in there afterwards, started going in and out of it. He missed every potential part to cause an injury to his brain.
Wow.
Freakiest call. The guy's perfectly fine.
Wow.
Don't know how he did it, but that call will always stick.
That's the winner. So I'm curious, I really am curious about your view on the afterlife, on mortality, because you've seen a lot of people pass, I'm sure. Having been close to it, I would imagine you have an opinion.
Yeah, about for 6 years after the fire, when I worked at the fire department, you would think about death so frequently. You think about your dog dying, you think about your parents dying, because you get called out to these 911 calls where it's just like, you go there in the worst moment of someone's life, right? The family, everyone's grieving at that point, that they're in denial. And, sometimes you get called out to a 911 call, like one of these welfare checks, and you go and check on the person, a lot of elderly, or it's just like they were walking out to the kitchen to go grab some water and they just, had a heart attack and died right there. And you see them in the position that they were in, what they were reading, some people that were having an asthma attack and they couldn't get to their inhaler, albuterol, and you can just see it right in front of them. So, those things, it causes a trauma, right? These are demons that are stuck in your head that never leave. You just learn how to control it. You learn how to live with it. But you think about death frequently. And it really took about 6 years after I retired. I retired at age 32. So until I was about almost 38, which is just like a couple of years ago, I was thinking about death very frequently. Now that I'm not exposed to death as much, I think I've been able to really put it off to the side a bit more. But it's one of those things where you just have to accept death. And the one thing that I will give my career in the fire department is that I'm more conscientious of being safe than doing things that are risky, right? And what I mean by that is, like, if I'm driving my car, the little thing that starts dinging that I don't have my seatbelt on is not what makes me put my seatbelt on. It's the kids or the parents that got ejected out of the vehicle and died or got decapitated throughout the process, and me seeing that makes me wear the seatbelt, right? Because I have friends, and I was this guy before I started working at the fire department. Oh, I don't want to get my shirt wrinkled,
Right.
I got to go into this business meeting. Fuck this shirt, What I've seen, trust me, put on the seatbelt. Yeah, I'll take some wrinkles. So, just the things that I've seen make me kind of be, and sometimes it's a little bit annoying, or should I say, I feel like other people feel like it's annoying because I'll tell people like, hey, don't do that. You shouldn't do that because this might happen. And they're looking and say, dude, what's up with this guy? Why is he so protected and whatnot? And that's because I've seen people die from it, from that, and it's, there was one guy that was picking mangoes off his tree, with one of those little mango picker that kind of looks like a rake with a little basket. And he hit one of the power lines with it. Man, I've never seen a body cooked the way that I saw that body.
Wow.
Guess what I won't do? I'm not picking mangoes. I'll go to the grocery store and fucking buy mangoes. So, the little things like that. So if I see someone doing something and I kind of see the power line, even though they might miss the power line, right? But me just seeing it before, it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
So,
but having seen, again, because it sounds like you're somewhat religious, and also having seen a lot of death, do you have an opinion about the afterlife? From your firsthand experience.
Yeah, I do, man. I've come across people that have died, and we've resuscitated them, and they've come back, and they've seen things. They've actually have came out of their body, and I believe it. I do think that there is an afterlife. But you know, the interesting thing is you know, they always say science should always be questioned. I think everything should be questioned. So being in the alternative medicine space where there's a lot of bioquantum energy and everything, I try to put a lot of these puzzle pieces together. You know, being a believer and a Christian myself and being into the word, I try to like see how everything fits, you know, and I can't say I have an answer, but there is something greater and bigger than us, right? And we are a bunch of different frequencies, us, right? Our soul. So we go somewhere else, 100% that we do. Um, and it's something that I'll just continue kind of like studying and kind of understanding it. You know, I am the guy who will spend time. Not that I have a lot of free time, but I'm the guy who's gonna will watch like things about the universe on Netflix and different documentaries. Like, do aliens exist? Like, I'm that guy. I want to know. You know, I've watched so many things about what is it, Area 51?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
you know, like, are there real things here? Like, is that how a lot of our technology is being developed from things that came from another universe or another planet? So there's something that's greater than us.
Well, that's satisfying, quite frankly. It's like, you know, not that I've never been around death, but nothing like what you've experienced. And yeah, I figured out you'd have some firsthand experiences that would be interesting. Well, you know, Sam, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I appreciate how open you've been. Really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, if people want to find me, they could easily just Google Sam Tejada and tons of stuff will come up. Or they could go to samtejada.com. If they want to learn more about Liquivida, liquivida.com. I'm very active online on the social media platforms. So my Instagram is Sammy_Tejada. And, you know, you type in my full name, Sam Tejada, anywhere on any social media platform, I'll pop up.
Great. Sam, thanks again for coming on.
Awesome, man. It's been a pleasure.